Belarus, and we will mobilize additional funds of around €1 million to support these returns, but also help with readmission and reintegration. Overall, this will take our support for returns to 3.5 million voluntary returns from Belarus. We are also specifically addressing the conspiracy theories, the disinformation and the manipulation of information by Belarusian and other state-controlled media to would-be migrants of the realities that would face them. We have been addressing and will continue to do directly these desperate people by telling them what to expect. There is a lot to do to debunk and expose publicly these lies. On the new tool, Adina will give us the details in a second of how we can now credibly use this new tool to blacklist transport operators engaged in these activities. But let me conclude these introductory remarks with the two main lessons that I have personally taken out of this crisis, which I probably repeat, you would have me saying also in the plenary, so apologies for repeating them, but repetitio mater studiorum. I said that the first takeaway is that when the European Union acts as Team Europe, we are unstoppable. The combined leverage and effort of the EU institutions, of our field visits, of our diplomatic contacts, of our friends and allies is fantastic. It's formidable. And this is something that we need to treasure and capitalize on. And the second lesson for me, especially because this is a geopolitical commission and we want to honor this term, is that the most effective tools that we have at our disposal are tools and instruments that are firmly grounded on EU law. This is where the European Union can make a difference. Diplomatic démarches, communiques, contacts, papers, all this help, but the appeal, the effectiveness of an instrument grounded in EU law is something of an exceptional value that we needed, deployed, and profited from in these exceptional times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move to Commissioner Vălean. Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that in recent weeks, many within the global aviation community have acted quickly and forcefully to support the EU in combating this new threat orchestrated by Belarus of human trafficking and smuggling. I would like to once again thank those aviation authorities and airlines that have proactively supported us. All airlines contacted by us have strongly condemned any form of human trafficking and have indicated that they are fully committed to fight against it. And you have seen the communication and you know the developments in this respect. Our new proposal targets transport operators that facilitate or engage in smuggling or trafficking of people into the EU. It gives us a powerful tool to take action where operators have failed to act or seek to benefit from the exploitation of vulnerable people. By listing the transport operators involved, we will be safeguarding the security of the EU's external borders and acting to end this exploitation of vulnerable individuals for political gain. The new rules, put forward in this regulation, are designed to prevent the use of commercial transport, any of them, from planes to ferries, lorries or other kind, for smuggling or trafficking asylum seekers or migrants. Those operators found to be in breach of the rules may have their right to operate in the EU suspended or limited, may be denied the right to fly over the EU, call at EU ports or make technical stops within the EU, or they may be banned from transiting throughout EU territory. Any listing will apply for up to 1 year and may be renewed if necessary. I hope that we will not need to use this regulation, and the transport operators will themselves act to avoid being an accessory to trafficking or smuggling. But we are now prepared to take action if they don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move to your questions. First, let me see if there's a question from the room. Yes, please.
Thank you for the floor, Tommaso Lecca with AG News Agency. So I have a couple of questions concerning this package. About this 200 million euros available to Latvia, Lithuania and Poland for border management. Will the countries be able to use such money to build walls and to install barbed wire at the border? And a second question about the 15,000 migrants which are at the moment stuck in Belarus. I understand that you'd like to send them all back to the countries of origin, but as you know, many of them will not agree or will not be able to do so. Is the European Union ready to take at least a part of them? I'm talking about the most vulnerable groups of migrants, like minors, women traveling alone, etc. Thank you.
Okay, on your first question, I think it is by now very clear, and the President said it publicly on behalf of the College, that border management is something that we are very sensitive on. It's something that we consider a common responsibility that should not be left only to the Member States that by geography have to assume this obligation. And proof of that is that our EU funding precisely goes to the direction of a robust border management system. A robust border management system should be understood as something that is not the barbelé, the stones, or the physical wall, as very often this debate is being simplified. A robust border management system is an ecosystem of vehicles, technology, cameras, regional command, operational centers, things that can be used effectively for border management, some of which are already being deployed. I was personally in September in the Lithuanian-Belarusian border and saw some of that. So instead of reproducing this debate of barbelé and walls and cement and stones that you know on which our position is very clear, we would like to make sure that all our member states can benefit from EU funding for robust management of their borders, and we will be there for them. Now, on your questions, on the second question about the people stranded there, of course, people are stranded there under extreme conditions. We are now November, December will be even more difficult, so there is a priority to take these people out, and of course, the fastest track is returns. And returns are now picking up. I think we have managed to establish, as Josep Borrell also said, a network of contacts between us, the Iraqis, the Polish, and the international agencies that are working on the ground, and we want to see this accelerated, and we will help both with financing these returns, but also with helping Iraq mainly with readmission support for the people who come back and need to restart their lives.
Thank you. So that we know when to pass him the floor. Yes, please.
My name is Ilza Nagla from Latvian Television, and my question goes to the Vice President. I would like to follow up on the question my colleague asked. So if I understand correctly, then the Commission is ready to support Latvia, Lithuania and Poland with that money, everything for the border, robust border management, but the fence. So fence is out of the question. Am I correct to interpret what you said like that?
You are correct in the sense of defining a fence as something that pertains to stones and barbelé. You're not correct when you define a robust border management system that goes beyond these physical elements to a wider ecosystem of border management on which we can do a lot.
Thank you. I go to the Interaction platform now. Philippe Régnier. Philippe, tu as la parole.
Voilà. Est-ce que ça fonctionne?
Oui, vas-y.
Bonjour, Philippe Régnier, Journal de Soir. J'ai deux questions. La première, liée à une petite confusion. Est-ce que vous pourriez préciser quelle est la différence finalement entre cette proposition législative du jour, déposée par la Commission, et le paquet de sanctions dont les ministres des Affaires étrangères ont approuvé le principe politique, mais qui visent en fait les mêmes opérateurs? Est-ce qu'il faut comprendre le cadre législatif légal comme étant, disons, pour le futur et de futures tentatives de jouer cette carte-là, et les sanctions dont question par les ministres pour sanctionner les opérations qui ont eu cours ces dernières semaines? Ma deuxième question porte sur ce que vous indiquez, donc que vous travaillez toujours sur une proposition visant à amender l'article 78 paragraphe 3, non plutôt utiliser l'article 78 paragraphe 3 du traité sur donc la politique d'asile et de retour. Quel sera l'effet de cette proposition de modification concrètement, pour essayer de comprendre ça mieux? Merci beaucoup.
Merci Philippe. On the first question, Commissioner, I think this is for you. The second one for the Vice President.
Thank you very much. For the situation, for the current situation, what we applied, because it was easy to be done, and I thanked at the beginning of my statement, was the so-called soft diplomacy. So engaged with aviation associations, with operators, with civil association authorities, and we found an open door. And we found them willing to stop this afflux of various passengers holding specific nationalities towards Belarus. So that's why we don't have something to apply right now for the situation existent or the pre-existing situation. Our regulation comes as a new tool, as a pan-European tool to apply in a way we are doing, for example, with the air safety blacklist, where we are blacklisting if there is enough reason, or it is found that some companies are not fulfilling the obligations in terms of safety, then we are blacklisting them and they are not allowed to, or they are restricted towards operations in EU. The same is going to happen with a blacklist, but for all transport operators who would be heard and found out that they are willingly or are part willingly or are not taking measures to stop such practices for smuggling migrants or human trafficking migrants into the EU. So indeed, this regulation, which needs to be approved by the Parliament and the Council, I hope quickly, will be for the future situations.
On the second question.
On the question of exceptionality, of course, I mentioned two tracks. One is Article 78.3 of the treaty, which allows for exceptional provisional measures in the area of asylum and return that will concern the three member states affected by the current crisis and the instrumentalization. And then, since this is an ad hoc procedure only for the member states affected, I also mentioned our intention to present reform proposals for the Schengen Border Code, where for the first time we will introduce a definition, a legal definition of the word instrumentalization. The word instrumentalization, we can define it politically, but we cannot define it, we haven't defined it legally so far, and we will also include in the Schengen Border Code proposal the possibility for member states to adopt exceptional measures to cope with instrumentalization situations. So 78.3 is for the countries concerned. Now, Schengen Border Code will be the systemic legal framework for all. Let me take this opportunity to remind you also of our proposal on the table for an EU pact for migration and asylum that also allows for this type of situations. It's a bit different. We describe them as crisis situations, but this is still another option that we have on the table. So many possible avenues available.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. My question is also on this new blacklisting instrument. Unlike the one we've been speaking about for the past weeks, it will be something run entirely by the Commission. And as you suggest, the Member States will have could withdraw a measure, but it will be all done by implementing decision by the Commission. So I'm wondering whether the Commission in fact does have all the competences it needs to do so. And I'm specifically thinking of the Belarus case that we had early in the year. There was a framework decision taken by the Member States to withdraw landing rights and overflight rights, but member states took then national decisions to implement that into their law. So, simply put, is the Commission able to do what it promises here? Question number one. Question number two, would it be possible for any listed company or individual to challenge this listing in the EU Court of Justice, which is possible, of course, for all kinds of listings under council sanctions, and is one reason why it takes so long to actually come up with these proposals. Thank you.
Commissioner.
So this is particularly why we are proposing now this regulation at European level, to have an instrument in order to act, so to be able to act at European level. It's true that until now, or without that, we are looking at agreements, bilateral agreements mainly, between third countries operators and member states. But now we can tackle this issue on human trafficking and smuggling through a European instrument, and that's precisely why we are proposing this. Indeed, it's an implementing act with comitology, and indeed, in it, it is foreseen that the parties, the respective party has the right to be heard. So basically, it's not something automatically triggered by the Commission. It is eventually discussed, proposed, investigate, and then proposed into the comitology to be agreed, of course, case by case. I said at the end of my presentation that I really hope that instrument won't be actually be used, because a good part of its purpose is the prevention, or to help operators to choose not to be part of such, the transport operators to choose not to be part of this kind of practices. And until now, when we flagged it with airlines from third countries, we discussed, myself, our team from DG Move, Vice President Shinas, we spoke with everyone, and we found, as I said, nearly an open door, because no one actually wants to be labelled as being part of these illegal practices. So, yes, pan-European instrument, yes, implementing act with comitology, yes, the right to be heard, and finally, yes, prevention tool. That's what we hope to be in the end.
Thank you. We have time for just one or two more questions. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Francesco Bortoletto for the Italian website Europa Today. I just wanted to reiterate the question from my colleague regarding the migrants still stuck at the Belarusian border, since I'm not sure you answered on that. So is the EU considering to take in any part of them, or will it just consider send them back to their origin countries? Is this item actually even on the table? Thank you.
With all due respect, the question is formulated in a way that does not correspond to law. The Commission or the European Union cannot take anybody back or not take anybody back, because these are not decisions of the European Union. We do not have competence for that. The legal avenues are very clear. These people either would return, as many of them do, through voluntary returns, or will apply for asylum, and their asylum application will be granted, will be considered, whether to be granted or not. And Belarus is not exempt from the obligations to consider applications for asylum. They are bound by the Geneva Convention. So these people would have different avenues to decide for themselves when they are stranded in the forest. But I would like, with all due respect, to advise against an oversimplification of the facts around it, because we are talking about people in desperate situation, and we should not give the impression, be it also journalistically speaking, that someone can, by a strike, some sort of magic strike, can take these people there or somewhere else. This would simply aggravate their situation. We have to stick to the procedures, to law, and do the best we can by activating, as we are doing, all possible tracks to help these people.
Okay, thank you. I take a question from Martin Kay from the platform.
Now, I was wondering if this providing of money for support for voluntary returns from Belarus to the countries of origin, would you mind going a bit more into to what extent this will mean cooperation with the Belarusian authorities? I guess it will need some kind of cooperation with the Lukashenko regime in order to conduct these returns from Belarus. And besides, Skinas, I'm pretty sure I know your position on financing barbed wires and stones on the borders, but would you mind telling us why exactly you don't want to pay for it? Thank you.
Okay, on the first question on returns, yes, we were stepping up returns. Inevitably, there has to be some organizational aspects involved, and these are made mainly by contacts of the Iraqi government with the international organizations on the ground and the regime, the Belarusian regime, because these people are on Belarusian soil, and these return flights will have to be organized from Belarusian airports to Baghdad or Erbil, which are I think the two destinations more in demand. We will assist, we will organize, we will pay, if you like. That's why I announced the 1 million for returns. That adds to the overall sum of 3.5 million that we have earmarked for returns, and we will also support the Iraqi authorities with readmission support so that these people, when they come back, can have a new start. Now, on the wall, I think the President spoke. She spoke for the College. This is the position of the Commission already from the Juncker years, when I had the opportunity to explain it and defend it many times. This is where we stand, and I think the issue is much more complicated, again, to be oversimplified. I explained, and the President did, and Commissioner Johansson also did, what we can finance, and I think with what we can finance, we can have a robust management of our external borders with strong support that responds to the problems we're facing.
Thank you. On contact with the Belarusian authorities, I pass the floor to the High Representative.
Relations point of view, I want to stress that there is no deal and there is no negotiations with Lukashenko regime. And there is nothing that can look like any kind of de facto recognition. Another thing is that we have to keep the channel of communications open. I personally talked twice with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Belarus. Senior officials of the External Action Service have been in touch with his deputy minister after our phone conference, and at that moment a small team, representative of the Commission of the External Action Service, are traveling to Minsk in order to undertake technical, not negotiations, but understanding of which are the needs in order to facilitate the repatriation in cooperation with United Nations agencies. The mission should be understood as to assess the needs and to take decisions of cooperation on the repatriation process. But it has nothing to do with recognition, has nothing to do with negotiations.
Thank you. Angela, last question.
Yes, thanks, Rick. A question for Vice President Skinas. Any update about the letter that Orban says he sent to Brussels to ask to cancel the infringement procedure on migrants? It is something connected to the crisis on the Polish border, because he's saying they are kicking back migrants and they're not punished by Brussels. We are doing the same and we have the procedure. Thanks.
These procedures are, as all infringement procedures, by the way, do not open and close just like that. There is always a scope for a specific infringement that pertains to a non-implementation or violation of existing community legislation. There is no political margin for infringements. This is a process by the book. And the only way to stop these infringements is when the issues that these infringements cover or concern will be sorted out. Once will be sorted out, infringements will stop. But infringements do not stop for political reasons or through letters. They stop only through explanations and effective action to redress the problems identified through the infringement process.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our slot here in the press room. I apologize to those I was not able to give the floor to, and I'd like to thank the European Parliament for their hospitality, as always. Thank you very much. See you next month here in the press room.